Shalom, Shalom Israel. Welcome back to another edition of World History according to the Bible. My name is Shamar Yah, and to my right,
Brother Yatab.
Brother Yatab. And tonight we are going to be going into St. Patrick's Day, right? So I don't think that this is one of those holidays that has a huge stronghold on our people. We're not going to be here all night. I don't think that this is one of the ones that we go above and beyond for, like some of the other holidays that we do in America, some of the other traditions that we keep and that we teach our children. But there are still some of our people that do partake, and there are still traditions, as with all these other holidays, so-called, right? As with all these other traditions, it's a melting pot of information, of time, of traditions that have all been melted together so that it's a one-size-fits-all for just about everybody. There's, it's rooted in Catholicism, it's rooted in Christianity, it's rooted in paganism, it's rooted in Irish culture. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to touch on some of these things that have been meshed together, this amalgamation of different things that is St. Patrick's Day. Let's start off with Psalms chapter 148. Let's get 14. So the first thing is, when you hear St. Patrick's Day, we hear a lot of these, right? It's no different, like you hear St. Valentine, or what's the other one? St. Nick, right? But if you read in the scriptures, first and foremost, it tells you that there's a standard, there's a requirement in order to be called a saint. Psalms 148 and verse 14.
The book of Psalms, chapter 148 and verse 14.
Uh-huh.
And it reads, He also exalteth the horn of his people, the praise of all his saints.
The praise of all his saints, right? Go ahead.
Even of the children of Israel.
Even of who?
The children of Israel.
The children of Israel. Those are his saints. Those that are law-abiding Israelites. Those are the saints. Go ahead.
A people near unto him. Praise ye the Lord.
So that's where, first and foremost, this whole concept of someone being a saint, right? You hear that a lot. People might say, oh, this person's a saint. Or they might say, oh, I'm not a saint. It gets tossed around loosely as if a saint is anyone who is of a stand-up moral character. But that's not the case. It's anyone of a stand-up moral character of Israel. So all throughout the scriptures, where you hear a lot of these terms, these titles, these things being loosely used and freely thrown around, but they're not actually according to scriptures, not actually according to the Bible. Not everybody's a saint, and not everyone can claim that title. He said it's of the children of Israel. Those are his saints. So there is, when we're talking about Saint Valentine, Saint Patrick, what was the other one, Nick, are these Israelites? Are they law abiding, right? And then what legacy did they have, or what has their image been used to do? Let's go over to Colossians chapter 2. Not yet, but I'm about to go out. Colossians chapter 2, and let's start at verse 8.
The book of Colossians chapter 2 and verse 8. And it reads, "Beware, lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit."
Philosophy and vain deceit. Philosophy is an ideology, right? People talk about their philosophies. I don't want to talk about my philosophy. I want to embody my philosophy. Let's get that real quick. Philosophy, all learning exclusive technical precepts and practical arts, the sciences and liberal arts, a discipline comprising as its core logic, aesthetics, ethics, metaphysics, and epistemology, right? So where something is stemming from, a search for a general understanding of values and reality by chiefly speculative rather than observational means. So there's a certain level of speculation that comes in with philosophy, because it's really not someone being able to say, okay, this is guaranteed. They're saying, well, it sounds like this. There's a certain gray window, right? A certain level of speculation that goes into it. So he's saying when it comes to the world, everybody's got a philosophy. Everybody is a self-proclaimed leader. That's why you have social media set up that same way, right? People have what? Followers. And it's to a point where in our society, you're more valuable the more followers you have. You're more of a leader. You're more of an influential figure because you have followers. And that's why so many people get caught up with the celebrities, because they have 15, 16, 30, 100 million people following them, tuning into their words. They go live. It's millions of people tuning in wherever they are, whatever they're doing, trying to see what this person has to say. And the scriptures say, don't allow people's philosophy to spoil you, to rob you, right? And vain deceit, right? Go ahead.
After the rudiments of the world and not after Christ.
Read that one more time. After the traditions of men.
Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit. After the tradition of men. After the rudiments of the world and not after Christ.
He said after the tradition of men. So many of the things that is celebrated, right? It's given to us when we're children. Why? Because that's when your mind is in a totally different, it's even science behind it of how the brain is set up when you're very young. There's certain receptors in the brain that aren't present at other times in life. And that's when all of these things are pushed. All these things are given to us to be able to receive. And then we grow older. Once we have information at our fingertips, cell phones, computers, Wi-Fi, once we have a desire to learn and seek, we no longer feel the need to revisit the things that we've already been doing for so long. We just accept them as fact, right? But the reality is, these are traditions, and not just any traditions, the traditions of men. He said, after the rudiments of the world and not after Christ. Because these things, I'm not going to say we don't realize, but you really have to understand the gravity of this being Babylon, this being the land of confusion. All the things that have been infused into the traditions of this land, even down to the language, right? It's all being infused with something. And this being a spiritual Egypt, you see a lot of the same gods, a lot of the same dates, a lot of the same traditions that have been used in paganism, revamped, right? Resurfaced, whatever you want to call it, being used in a way that you wouldn't even realize or wouldn't even care to seek out something's origins. And then when you do, it's like you discovering it's like a conspiracy theory, right? You come across all these things that I had no idea was about this. I had no idea it was about that. So I want to start off by reading this to my point. The holiday on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, was not always Christian. So it has some Catholic origins, it's got some Christian origins, but it wasn't even always a Christian holiday. It says, in fact, it was previously a pagan holiday. Ostera, or the spring equinox, celebrating nature's rebirth and balance of the universe, both night and day of equal length. So typically, this is what is the spring equinox, right? A day where typically when the seasons change, the days lengthen or shorten, right? During summertime, you have much longer days. The sun comes up earlier, it stays out longer, the nights are shorter, hence the heat. Wintertime, the days are shorter and the nights are longer. Sun comes up later, it's not out as long, hence the cold. So the celebration originally was to Ostera, or the celebration of the spring equinox, when the day and the night were of equal lengths, right? Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 10. So what does this all have to do with St. Patrick's Day? How does this all tie in? Jeremiah chapter 10, and we're going to read verse 1 and 2.
The book of Jeremiah chapter 10 and verse 1.
Uh-huh.
Hear ye the word which the Lord speaketh unto you, O house of Israel.
O house of Israel. So the Most High, throughout the scriptures, he's always speaking to Israel, right? He has prophets, he had deliverers, he had judges, but he's always dealing with Israel exclusively. Go ahead.
Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen.
And he's making that differentiation for a purpose. He's not speaking to all lands, because this wouldn't make sense if he says, learn not the way of the heathen, then what's a heathen? If you look in certain dictionaries will tell you a heathen is someone who does not believe in God. And while that is a common trait of a heathen, that's not all a heathen is. Excuse me. A heathen, scripturally, is someone that is not within the covenant of Israel, not an Israelite by blood. So the Most High is warning the children of Israel. He said, look, don't learn the way of these other nations, of these heathen. Don't learn their ways. We have a culture, we have a history, we have a language, we have a land, we had currency, we had holy days, where your holidays come from, right? We already had all of these things. And our biggest downfall repeatedly was wanting to be like everybody else. Wanting to be like everybody else. We didn't have a king. We had Melchizedek, right? You read in Genesis, it said Melchizedek, king of Salem, king of Jerusalem. We wanted more of a physical, deal with you on a day-to-day basis type of king. The Most High was reigning over Israel. We said we wanted a king because we seen that with the other nations. We take on a lot of these customs because we see it with the other nations. We want to celebrate certain ways, certain days, and then we want to celebrate certain ways because of the heathen. So that's been a major downfall for Israel as a whole, is looking at the nations round about us and partaking of their ways, deciding to be like everybody else. When the Most High said, you're holy. Holy meaning to be set apart. He said, I didn't make you like everybody else. I didn't make you to do the things that everybody else is doing. I made you a clean people, a holy people. There's a certain way you got to dress. There's a certain way you got to eat. More importantly, there's a certain way you have to act. There's a certain way your behavior has to reflect that you're this special that I've made you. Go ahead.
Thus said the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven.
He said, and don't be amazed at the signs of heaven. Don't be amazed by these things. Don't sit up here. Yeah, astrology is useful. Sure enough, you can get seasons, because the Most High said he set up the sun, the moon, and the stars. They're to be for times and for seasons, right? We know that we're keeping Passover on the 14th day at even of the month, the 15th day. Before there was a calendar, or before, everybody had what we have now, you would look up at the moon. And you still have to look up at the moon if you want to have the proper calendar, and you say, okay, the moon is as bright as it can be. It's, waned as much as it's going to. It's a full moon. Okay, it's the middle of the month. That's how you know when to keep your Passover. So he said these things are in place, right? But being dismayed, having this amazement is when we go above and beyond with the astrology. People want to, worship the images of these things, sun gods, Nimrod, all these worship of these things that are simply creations of the Most High. So if these things are incredible, how much more he that made them, right? So we get dismayed at these things, and we start identifying with them. Oh, I'm a Sagittarius. I'm a Scorpio. I'm a Pisces. You can't tell me that I'm this way because, and it's crazy because I didn't realize how far it went. Somebody will tell you they having a bad day or they got an attitude because a moon of an entirely different planet, millions miles away, supposedly, is in a certain spot, and it's affecting the way that you behave. And you can't stop it. Not that, maybe, I don't know, I kind of think that it's like, no, I just can't control it today because the moon of Venus is looking like this, and then Saturn is, our people are dismayed at the signs of heaven. We teach our children. That's how we was identifying ourselves coming up. And so proud to wear these titles. I'm a Cancer, I'm a Scorpio, I'm a this, I'm a that. Given to us as children, and we carry on through tradition, right? He said, don't be dismayed at the signs of heaven. Go ahead.
For the heathen are dismayed at them.
He said the heathen, they're amazed. They're impressed. They're trying to keep up. They're trying to study. They forming gods. Let them do that. There's a certain level of barbarianism that comes with heathenistic customs. When you really start to study where these things came from, the people who invented them or who conceived them, they're barbaric in nature. The celebrations are barbaric, right? The customs are barbaric. The things that they partake in, the type of people that they were, is heathenistic. Let's go over to let's go over to the PowerPoint. So let's talk about this because it comes from this spring festival, but there's so much that goes into, especially as history progressed, how St. Patrick's Day has been kept, how St. Patrick's Day is viewed, how it came to be what it is now. Can we head over to the PowerPoint? There we go. So the tradition of St. Patrick's Day. Can we read that out?
The holiday is a cultural and religious celebration held annually on March 17th, the death anniversary of the patron saint of Ireland.
Mind you, I think that his recorded death commonly is 461. So this is not something new, right? This is an ancient custom. And we're all in 2023. So you're talking over 1,000 years, over 1,500 years ago that this actual person, right, existed. And all of these things have been folklore around his legend, his name, and then things throughout history have been added on and packed in to be able to suit different peoples, different customs, different religions, whatever the case may be. But it shows you originally, yeah, it has some cultural elements, but it was religious. It was a religious celebration. So we cannot partake in these things like it's just something fun for the kids. You're teaching them to serve other gods, right? You're teaching them to be in sin, to acknowledge these days, because kids, they looking forward to it, right? Kids want to have fun. Kids want to play. They want to enjoy themselves. So if you say this today, we got to wear green, we got to do this, we got to do that, kids are excited for that type of thing. You don't have to police them. They'll do it themselves once they're introduced. But it has to do with a religious celebration. Read on.
In Ireland, St. Patrick's Day has traditionally been a spiritual and religious occasion. The March 17th celebration started in 1631, when the church established a feast day honoring St. Patrick. He had been patron saint of Ireland, who had died around the 5th century, a whopping 12 centuries before the modern version of the holiday was first observed.
Hold it right there. Let's get Exodus 20:3. So they said, he died approximately 461, right? This celebration started in 1631. 12 centuries, that's 1,200 years, 1,200 years after he had already been deceased. That's when the celebrations really started to take off and all around this man who had been long gone. Anyone who knew him had been long gone, right? Exodus 20 and 3.
Book of Exodus chapter 20 and verse 3. Thou shalt have no other gods before me.
So the Most High said, you are to have nobody else before me. And then he also says, don't even let the name of these other gods come out of your mouth. So I don't even want to hear you mention these other gods. So when we're talking about a religious festival, a religious celebration occasion, whose religion? Of what origin? Is this something our people should be keeping or something that we've disconnected from? Can we continue on the PowerPoint?
He had been patron.
Uh-oh.
He had been patron saint of Ireland who had died around the 5th century, a whopping 12 centuries before the modern version of the holiday was first observed. But very little is known about who he actually was.
So and I'm sorry, hold on right here. So very little is known of who he actually was. You can research the actual man himself was, I believe, taken as a slave, I think, at 6 years old into Ireland. Taken as a slave at a young age into Ireland. I don't even think the man was Irish in origin. And actually, it's mentioned right after he was a Roman citizen. So this isn't even an Irish man that has all these celebrations, everything got his name slapped on it and all this kind of stuff. He wasn't even an Irish man. Read on.
Very little is known about who he actually was.
Mm-hmm.
According to Marion Casey, a clinical assistant professor of Irish studies at New York University and a regular marcher in the St. Patrick's Day parade in Manhattan, we know that he was a Roman citizen because Britain was Roman then. And then he was enslaved and taken to Ireland, where he either escaped or was released.
So this man wasn't even an Irish-born man, Roman citizen, right? Modern day Britain. Then he was enslaved and taken to Ireland, and then either he was, it's not even clear because keep in mind it's at least 1,000 years old. He was then, they said, we don't know how he got free, if he was enslaved or if he was, not enslaved, if he escaped or he was released, but they know that he did exist at least. Go ahead. Let's go to the next slide.
Origin. For the past millennium, St. Patrick's Day has been a Christian holiday, honoring Ireland's patron saint, Patrick, on the anniversary of his death. The holiday on March 17th was not always Christian. In fact, it was previously a pagan holiday, Ostara, or the spring equinox, celebrating nature's rebirth and balance of the universe, both night and day of equal length. It wasn't until the early 18th century that many of today's traditions were kicked into high gear. However, even this iconography cannot be fully extracted from its religious roots.
So there's the pagan festival mentioned again, right? 461, stemming from, I believe, Romans, right? Because this was a Roman man. Over 1,000 years later, now they're starting to celebrate. They're using his name. And the reality is they said fully what this festival was behind, it's really hard to say. It's hard to say where its origins are. But you do know that it's pagan in origin, right? That's what they do know, right? So when you're speaking of pagan, you're speaking of something that has A, nothing to do with the Most High, and B, usually stemming from what's called a polytheistic society, a society with many gods. We are, as Israelites, monotheistic, a society with one God. Let's go to the next slide.
Originally blue.
Okay.
After all, the earliest depictions of St. Patrick show him clothed in blue garments, not green.
Hold on, I'm sorry. So then the whole green thing, right? A lot of things were changed green so that they would have an association with Ireland. But they're saying that originally St. Patrick wasn't even wearing green. So that's like one of the, a big tradition of St. Patrick's Day. If you didn't know anything, then you knew that if you weren't wearing green on that day, you'd get pinched, especially as a kid. And maybe that's a kid thing because they want the kids involved. But that's probably the biggest thing that I remember taking away from it. But originally, he wasn't even wearing green. He was wearing blue. Go ahead.
He was clothed in blue garments, not green, and that when George III created a new order of chivalry for the Kingdom of Ireland, the Order of St. Patrick, its official color was a sky blue known as St. Patrick's Blue.
St. Patrick's Blue. Go ahead.
It wasn't until 1798, the year of the Irish Rebellion, that the color green became officially associated with the day.
So it wasn't until, let me see, he almost 1,400 years later, actually almost 1,400 years later, the year of the Irish Rebellion, now they're looking for, it's kind of like, you've probably seen the concept plenty of times, but I would say definitely in movies, right? There's always someone that they want to have as a poster child for something because people want an image. And it's a lot easier. That's why our people oftentimes fell into idolatry. We want something that we can see. The Jews require a sign. So it wasn't until 1798, after the Irish Rebellion, that poster child of St. Patrick was erected to be able to tie in and be, related to the Irish. Mind you, he's a Roman citizen. Go ahead.
It wasn't until 1798, the year of the Irish Rebellion, that the color green became officially associated with the day, Casey says. Up until the rebellion, the color associated with St. Patrick was blue, as it was featured both in the royal court and on ancient Irish flags. Mm-hmm. But if the British wore red, the Irish chose to wear green, and they sang the song, "The Wearing of the Green," during the rebellion, cementing the color's relevance in Irish history.
So it's been cemented, but that wasn't what it originally was. So the colors have been changed. The man may have existed, but his story has definitely changed, right? His citizenship and association has definitely changed. And this 1,200 years after he had already lived and died. So the more that you start to realize how many things have been implemented, because the color might not be the biggest thing, right? But that's all we know. Right? We see anything of Irish, we're going to see green. You see shamrocks, you see leprechaun, the fighting Irish, who's Conor McGregor, always with the flag, with that green. You always see this Irish pride surrounding the green. And that wasn't even their original history. So imagine if this was in 1800, still far before any of us existed or lived. Imagine how much different it was 1,400 years nearly before that when he actually lived. Oof. Let's go to the next slide. So corned beef. So it wouldn't be a so-called holiday if it didn't have its traditional meal. Pretty much all holidays. That's what makes them. You looking forward to a holiday, you looking forward to some kind of event, you want to have some type of signature meal. You thinking about party, or as an adult man, you think about Super Bowl, what's going to come to your mind? Probably some nachos, probably some ribs and hot links, probably some pizza, right? But those are like traditional meals. If you was busting out salads on the Super Bowl, people would act like you sinned, right? Corned beef has been used. It was corned beef and cabbage. It's been used traditionally, right? Because we're talking about traditions. Traditionally, that's the meal that is used on St. Patrick's. But even that has a different origin. Let's read that.
Corned beef. Corned beef and cabbage isn't actually the national dish of Ireland. You wouldn't eat it on St. Patrick's Day in Dublin, nor would you be likely to find it in Cork. It's typically only eaten around the holiday here in the U.S. So how did corned beef and cabbage become synonymous with the Irish?
So how did this happen, right? Go ahead.
During the time of the Irish immigration to the U.S., the first generation of Irish Americans were in search of the comforting taste of their homeland. On St. Paddy's Day, that meant boiled bacon.
Boiled bacon. That's the original meal that St. Patrick's Day was, that they partook of in St. Patrick's Day, right? Boiled bacon. So like most of these so-called holidays, it just goes back. The meal of choice is always pork. Thanksgiving, you got your Thanksgiving ham. Christmas, you got your Christmas ham. Sunday dinner after church, you eating that ham. St. Patrick's Day, no different. Let's finish that up, and then I want to get a scripture.
But the immigrants were too poor to afford the high price of pork and bacon products. Instead, they turned to the cheapest cut of meat available, beef brisket.
Beef brisket. So now that's how it came into be. But let's get a couple things. Let's get First Maccabees. Actually, before we get that, let's get Leviticus. You can bring it back to us. We're going to hit about 2 scriptures. Leviticus 11. We're going to read verse 7 and 8. So when you see a lot of these traditions, a lot of these meals, oftentimes rooting from pork, right? But then it begs to differ. If pork was expensive, it's kind of been known as, like, at least at some points in history, a noble type of meat. Why is it so commonly used? Anyone, like, Thanksgiving got the turkey. They got the more common animals. Some of these holidays incorporate more common things. But many of them, if not most, usually stem from partaking of pork. Go ahead.
The book of Leviticus, chapter 11, and verse 7. And the swine, though he divide the hoof, and be cloven-footed, yet he cheweth not the cud. He is unclean to you.
So there were 3 stipulations that an animal had to have in order to be considered clean and safe to eat. It had to have a divided hoof. It had to be cloven-footed, which is, in short, it's that little... It's actually an extra joint. They technically say it's supposed to be like an elbow on animals, where they have like that little piece of hoof or that little nub that's like midway up their leg. That's a cloven-footed animal. And then it says that they chew the cud, so they have to be vegetarian in origin pretty much. That they're chewing the cud, right? Those are the 3 requirements. So the pig has 2 of them. He got a divided hoof. He got a little split hoof in the front. And he's cloven-footed. He got that little nub up there by that elbow. But it says, but he don't chew the cud. A pig will eat anything. Anything. Pigs will eat garbage. They'll eat food scraps. They will eat doo-doo. Pigs will eat dogs. They will eat other pigs if they have a chance. What's the nature of a pig? It wallows in mud. That's where the poop is. That's where it's eaten. That's where it's giving birth. That's where it likes to relax. It's a disgusting animal, but it has a purpose. It'll clean up. Before you had a garbage man, you had animals that would naturally keep these kind of things in check. You had an ecosystem, right? Pig is part of that ecosystem. So is it important? Absolutely. But is it food? No. Verse 8.
Verse 8. Of their flesh shall ye not eat, and their carcass shall ye not touch. They are unclean to you.
And it's in so much that this is so unclean. He said, look, don't even touch their flesh. You got a live pig on your farm because he cleans up all the doo-doo and all that. That's fine. That pig died. He said, I don't want you to touch it. If you got to get rid of it and bury it, see to it. But don't you dare partake of the flesh of that pig. And if you're, it would make you unclean by default just by touching it after it has died, right? He said, you are not to touch, they are unclean. It's an abomination unto you. That's like the worst thing. But that's what's so commonly given to our people. So many of us, we grew up. I grew up eating bacon in the morning, sausage in the morning, ham on these so-called holidays. They're always trying to find ways for us to partake, not only in their traditions, but in things that are abominable to us specifically. Let's go over to First Maccabees, because this isn't something new. This isn't something that, is exclusive or specific to St. Patrick's Day. It's not even something exclusive to so-called holidays. But it seems to always be a point being made about making sure that there's pork involved in the meal, and then next is making sure that we get us a piece. But you see this throughout our history. Because it's an abomination. The Most High said he didn't want to dwell with us while we were unclean. He said you can't even use the bathroom a certain way. You got to go outside the camp. We're supposed to be a clean people. But the longer that we're kept in sin, the longer that we're kept in our uncleanliness, the further the Most High is going to be away from us. 1 Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 41.
The book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 1 and verse 41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed, according to the commandment of the king.
So this is a time where Antiochus, right, he was declaring, right, this is a time that our people were in captivity. We were subject. And he said that everybody is going to leave their religion. We should all be one people. In order to be one people, you can't really have any differentiation. Can't get rid of pigment in skin, not easily. So he said, okay, well then leave your religion. Leave your customs, leave your names, leave the things that are making separations in between you. And you see these things very commonly because America still uses that in two ways. On the one hand, they have the ideology of divide and conquer. The more that we're different, the easier it is to identify that someone is different and essentially becomes an outsider. And that's why America has it so down pat to where if you're doing anything, they want you to look a certain way. You want an office job? You can't be looking all rough and rugged. You got to have a suit, a tie. You have to have professional attire. You blue collar, there's a blue collar type of look, right? There's a certain way that you have to dress. There's a certain uniform. You join the military. They're going to cut your hair, cut your beard. They want you to look a certain way, right? So Antiochus, this is nothing new to Esau, and this is nothing new trying to be enforced on our people. They want you to look a certain way, get you in a certain mindset, put you in a certain a feeling about your so-called fellow man when he looking like you, y'all all eating together, you going through the same struggles together, you living together. Oftentimes you get naked in front of one another. They doing these things by design, and it's nothing new to their people. Go ahead.
Verse 43, yea, many also the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath.
And this is where we go wrong, because we were made to be different. And that's why the Most High always says, and my people shall not be ashamed. Sometimes being different, they make it seem like it's something foul. Now everybody can't wait to be different. People don't want to wear the same shirt. Oh my gosh, she got on the jacket I got. I got to go home and change. He said, many of the Israelites, they made the decision within themselves, okay, you know what, we should do that. Yeah, let's leave off of the things that we do. And it wasn't just about leaving off of it. They profaned the Sabbath and sacrificed unto idols. You can't leave off of anything that you're doing and then it's like, well, I'm just not going to do this anymore. They was like, nah, you need to go a little bit. We need you to go further. Partake of the same things that we're partaking in. Because if you're not there, you still different. If you're not going to partake, you're still going to be outside. You're still going to be separate. You're still going to be holy. He said, no, I need y'all in here. I need you to sacrifice. And then, mind you, sacrifices not every sacrifice was just burnt to a crisp. After they would sacrifice it, they would partake of it, right? That's the same thing with the Levites. He said, this is basically your tenure. This is what you get to be because you're a Levite. This is your special privilege. All the things that Israel is bringing, when you offer these things as a sacrifice, he said, go ahead and get you that lamb shoulder. Go ahead, they offering wine. Well, the Most High said he don't dwell in buildings made with hands. What benefit is it to him to have these things that are of flesh? He said, all right, you being my Levites, you being my priests, he said, y'all can go ahead and partake of that. Y'all eat the showbread. You don't have to work. Focus on being a priest. You can go ahead. You can partake of these sacrifices. You can eat of the best. Have your little something. So when they were sacrificing abominations and sacrificing unto idols, they wouldn't just kill it and burn it to a crisp. They would then have a feast. They would eat of these things. Go ahead.
Verse 44, for the king has sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land and forbid burnt offerings.
So they wasn't allowed to do right. All those lambs and them oxen, them bullocks, Those doves, you said, nah, you're not doing that anymore. Go ahead.
And sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple.
In the temple. So they were forbid burnt offerings, sacrifice, and drink offerings in the temple because they wanted them to partake, but not in the temple of the Most High. Not unless it was abomination. Then you could bring that. You got a pig, you want to sacrifice it on the altar. He said, okay, you could do that. But you trying to offer them lambs and them bullocks still? He said, no, you can't do that. That makes you different. Go ahead.
And forbid burnt offering and sacrifice and drink offering in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days.
And that they should get rid of those things, profane those things, cast those things in the dust. It's not just about leaving your God, rebel against him. Go ahead.
And pollute the sanctuary and holy people.
Uh-huh.
Set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh.
Sacrifice who?
Swine's flesh.
Sacrifice swine's flesh. It wasn't random. They didn't just go out into a farm. They was like, oh, he got 30 pigs. He only got 5 cows. I guess we eating pigs. They said, no, we know this is an abomination to your God. We know this is an abomination for you to even touch. So you know what you got to do, right? Take that pig on in there. Sacrifice that pig. Partake of that flesh. Profane them Sabbaths. Leave off from these customs. They were sacrificing swine's flesh. So this is nothing new, right? And it says, and unclean beast. So it was other things. So now the PowerPoint is still up. Let's continue to read. So in origin, like the heathen have always done, like Esau has always done, they got that pork. They're going to have that pork for you. They're going to make sure that stays in rotation. They're going to make sure that stays available because they need Israel to profane and make themselves abominable. Go ahead.
What has become a tradition of eating corned beef and cabbage to celebrate St. Patrick's Day likely grew out of the fact that those foods were less expensive for immigrants who came to America. They substituted beef for pork and cabbage for potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Pigs were the most prevalent animal bred only to be eaten from ancient times to today. It earned the reputation as the most eaten meat in Ireland.
So what do you think that does to any Israelites that are living in Ireland? What do you think that does? Because it's not just enough that they do it. They want us to partake. So pigs, a cow might be bred, and they might say, okay, we need this component. We need to make this. It might not be just to be able to eat. We need some of these other things to, from this cow. He said, but pigs, nah, you only get those for food. So every pig you kill, it's all this meat that's coming off of it. You don't have to kill as many. It's not a whole lot of byproduct that you're trying to get from a pig. That's just for eating. They take they broil the skin. There go your chicharrones. There go your pig skin. Take the ribs. There go your 4th of July. Take your bacon. There go your breakfast. Take your ham. That's your Sunday dinner. Take your pig feet. We got something if you poor. You can't say you too poor to partake of that pig. We got hog maw and pig feet. Chitlins. It's always going to be something that they want you to have access to so you can continue to defile yourself. I done seen a lot of things change economically, right, in the short, very brief amount of time that I've been alive. You done seen milk pretty much stay the same in the past 20, 25 years. You've seen a shortage in eggs multiple times. Cheese done went up and down. Bovine done went up and down. Venison is harder to get than ever. All these different things, but pork has always been available. Stores might not have nothing, but especially in them poor income areas, they're going to make sure they got some pork for you. And you probably don't even mess with pork as much, but man, all right, my whole family got to eat. Chicken costs $8 a pound for this organic, antibiotic-free chicken. That ham is only $2.99 a pound. I can get 7 pounds of ham, and I'll be all right for the week. All right, we got to get this ham. It's always going to be available, right? Let's go to the next slide. The shamrock, another really popular, heavily infused component that you associate with luck, that you associate with Irish culture, but it actually has even more origins than those things. Let's read this.
Shamrocks. In the centuries following Patrick's death, believed to have been on March 17th, 461. The mythology surrounding his life became ever more ingrained in the Irish culture. Perhaps the most well-known legend of St. Patrick is that he explained the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, using the 3 leaves of a native Irish clover, the shamrock.
So I don't think I included it here, but I think it was the professor. Hold on, let me go see her name. Professor Casey, the one that was previously mentioned. I believe in her study, she was like, there was a lot of folklore around his name, and there isn't really anything to substantiate the fact that he was actually using the 3-leaf clover to explain the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. That was infused. Because you have, right, if you say pagan, people are they say, okay, hold on, what am I? I'm a Christian. I don't deal with paganism. Wait, what am I? I'm a Catholic. I ain't going to partake in that pagan custom. But then if you call it Christian, look, we got the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. It's like that's like your religion, right? Ain't that what y'all be talking about? That's why we use the shamrock. For real? Yeah, you could partake of this. Because it's really really is a Christian holiday. For real? Yeah, sit down. How you a plate of this boiled bacon? You get better off trying to get the corned beef, but you still celebrating this pagan holiday. So that's what they say was surrounding the whole importance of this clover and why it's so important, because it has to do with luck. It has to do with the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. But keep in mind, I believe it was 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea and the Council of Laodicea that debated whether or not these things, how heavily these things would even be infused in Christianity and Catholicism. Our people historically, or rather culturally, we don't believe in a Trinity. Israelites, biblical Israelites, you're not going to find a Trinity. He said, I and my Father are one. You see the Holy Spirit, but does that make them equal reigning of Godheads? No. Christ always said, he said, look, we're on one accord. We're in one agreement, but he already acknowledged. 1 Corinthians 11 acknowledges that the Most High reigns supreme. Second in command of all the universe is Yahweh Shai, whom the world knows as Jesus Christ. Then it's man, then it's woman. Then you have all these other, people in ranks and status and all that kind of stuff. But all these things have been used to tie in so that more people would adopt it. Now, if you Christian, come on in to the St. Patty's. Now, if you Catholic, come on in and celebrate that. They even say that, I believe this is the time of Lent, right? I just saw an article yesterday where the Pope, Francis, right? Pope Francis was saying, because Lent is going on, right? So let me backtrack a little bit. Lent is supposed to be a 40-day time where you fast from something, right? Because there is supposed to be a rendition of Yahweh Shai's fast of 40 days and 40 nights. So instead of food and water, people select pretty much anything that they decide that they're going to give up, and they're going to fast or abstain from it for 40 days. So some people, they'll choose TV. I'm not watching TV for the next 40 days. Some people say alcohol. Man, I've been losing control. I'm yelling and cursing at my wife and hit my kids too hard. I punched a hole in the drywall. I'm going to stop drinking for these next 40 days, right? Your health out of control. I ain't eating sweets for 40 days. But then the Pope came out and said for all Catholics, don't worry about your what do you call those? Your obligations for Lent. Don't worry about your 40-day fast. He said it's all right for St. Patty's Day. And they're putting that out publicly, this being the authority of the Catholic Church. So any devout Catholic that actually was trying to somewhat abstain, or if they said, I ain't going to eat this, I'm not going to do that, he said, no, don't worry about it. It don't count for this weekend. It don't count for them days. You go ahead, get drunk, go ahead and fornicate, you go ahead and partake of that pork just for a little while, and then you kind of get back on track, after. Let's go back to the PowerPoint.
The shamrock or Irish clover was established as a symbol for the Holy Trinity by St. Patrick himself, and the leprechaun has ties back to paganism, originally mischievous fairy spirits in Irish folklore.
So even the leprechauns, even everything around that, we don't have to read the next point because that's a repeat. Even everything around that And I don't mean the next point, I mean the next sentence. Everything around these traditions has some type of tie into a god, a spirit, right? And then leprechauns, really, it said mischievous fairy spirits. So these are supposed to be evil spirits that roamed, right? If you like folklore, maybe you like a little bit of these shows. Maybe you played The Witcher, right? What was it? It was a jinn, right? In folklore, if you caught it, it would give you wishes. But oftentimes, because it was a mischievous spirit, it would give you some type of irony, some type of punishment for your capture. So leprechauns were what do you call that? Have said pretty much that if you catch them and agree to let them go, they'll grant you 3 wishes. Matter of fact, I think everybody's seen Leprechaun from, what is that, 96? Them couple of movies. Every time they called him, he was like, man, you gotta give me some wishes. So you tie all these things in, but then the origins is like, these are evil spirits. These are satanic spirits that people are brandishing the image of. People are dressing like. People are trying to behave like. People are trying to channel and call, and they make it seem like it's a blessing if you find a leprechaun. They say at the rainbow. Mind you, this is supposed to be, or rather not even supposed to be, that is a sign that the Most High God Yahweh said, okay, you know what, I destroyed the earth with water before, but every time it rains, you're going to see this rainbow, so that you know I'm not going to destroy it with water again. And they took that and to be able to infuse it, and for it to be widely appealing and acceptable, said that there's a leprechaun at the end of a rainbow. Man, you be as a kid, you be followed a rainbow for miles because you feel like it's something on the end of this rainbow. If I can just get to the end, something incredible is going to happen to me. All the danger and how much you put your life at risk because you're looking for some mythical evil spirit at the end of this rainbow or this pot of gold, right? All these various different things that have been tied in so that our people, so that people, period, will partake. But obviously we only concerned with our people. So even the leprechaun itself ties back to paganism. So the meal is unclean. The man wasn't even who they said he was. The shamrock has something to do with the Trinity, so it could be adopted by Christians and Catholics. And then the spirits themselves are demonic in origin. And let's read that last one.
Today, St. Patrick's Day revelers wear a shamrock out of tradition.
Out of tradition. That's why we started off with that Colossians, the traditions of men. It's been passed down over and over and over again. How dark this really started is hard to say. Because they can't even all the way say, anything much was known about St. Patrick himself. Outside of his name, it's hard to find where he was born. It's fairly difficult to find where he died. They don't really know too many details about his life, if he escaped, if he was released, if he worked to be able to be free. But it was said that he was a priest, a Catholic priest, right? And then all these things that have been tied in around this man who had already been dead for 1,200 years by the time they decided to celebrate. Him. Bring it back over to us just for a moment. Because what's another tradition, right? That liquor, that alcohol. Let's go to Isaiah. I'm going to hit a couple scriptures on that as well. Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 11. Because that's another big thing. And that's, again, something to give these days mass appeal. You have traditions, you have fun. And oftentimes, it really just be an excuse to do evil. That's what people really look for. People are usually in that negative mindset. They're trying to hit a lick. They finna flock. They trying to catch somebody slipping, all this kind of stuff. So then they have these outlets, these parties. You can go do all these things. You want to fornicate? Oh, okay, put the liquor in there. They'll figure it out. Everybody be all drunk in a small space. Yeah, they'll piece it together. 5 and 11, Isaiah.
The book of Isaiah, chapter 5 and verse 11. Woe unto them that rise up early in the morning, that they may follow strong drink, that continue until night, till wine inflame them.
Woe means destruction. We talk about a self-destructive behavior, a self-destructive pattern. Most High was saying, look, that's one of them for sure. You are going to destroy yourself or find destruction waking up early in the morning chasing after liquor. And it's crazy because I believe it's called, what is it? Cirrhosis? Cirrhosis of the liver, yes, but then there's also something else that I can't exactly remember, but pretty much it's when you've had alcohol, a certain level of alcohol in your system for so long, your body becomes dependent. So people get tremors, they get the shaking, they have withdrawal symptoms that do not leave because their body has become so heavily dependent upon alcohol. You know, you see interviews of people who suffer from this condition. You know, sitting up there shaking. I got 4 shots of vodka in my morning coffee because I drank, you know, heavily for the past 20 years. Now I can't live without it. I built up a dependency. Now they got problems straight up after they wake up. They got all, you know, palsies and weaknesses, and somebody can't, you know, you got to lean over to one side. You get some liquor in your system and they stand straight up. It's bad. It be bad. And our people, and that's one of the things that you for sure see our people falling into is the liquor. It consumes our people oftentimes. Liquor store on every street for a reason. It's booming business. It's booming. He said, woe unto them. And it's crazy because that was a concept I never even understood in the world as a child. I remember being young, hearing about New Year's is probably one of the most that I heard about. That's when everybody got left. All the parents would, you know, go out, at least until a certain age. They would want to go party. And then I'd hear people on shows and on the radios, man, it was so crazy, I don't know what happened. I'd be like, ugh. You don't know what happened? You can't account for your body for the last 12 hours? Ugh. What happened to you? That's what it's like a mystery every time. And then they make, what was that movie, The Hangover? They make it seem like it was some amazing, wonderful adventure to have gone through. Many people don't have that glory story, fun wedding conclusion that they put in the movies. A lot of people, it's serious. They wake up and realize that they've made mistakes. He said, woe unto them, destruction unto them. Let me get another scripture because there's, let me see. He said, destruction unto them, because you wake up early, you drinking all day. Let's go to first Ezra. First Ezra 3. Because this is a very common story. And the reality is, I think a lot of us can give account to at least one time of our lives where this has happened. Let me see. Let's start at verse 18.
The book of 1 Ezra, chapter 3, and verse 18. And he said, thus, O you men, how exceeding strong is wine. It causes all men to err that drink it.
He said it makes every man. It don't matter who you are. You make a mistake when you drinking something. Right? Go ahead.
It maketh the mind of the king and of the father's child to be all one. Of the bondman and of the free man. Of the poor man and of the rich.
Okay, hold right there. He said it makes the mind of a king and the mind of a fatherless child, they're going to be the same off wine. That means you could be at the top of the world. Sometimes it can bring you down. You could be at the lowest point, and it could make you feel incredible. He said their minds are going to be in the same space because they have that liquor. A king, typically, a king lives in luxury. He don't really have to do nothing. He don't really have to go nowhere. He gives the commands. And the scriptures talk about it. He say to go to war, they go to war. He say to kill, they kill. He say to smite, they smite. He say hold on, they hold on. He tell them to plant vineyards, they plant it. He tell them to bring a tax, they policing each other. He said the heart of a man with that much authority and the heart of a man who did not have a father, they will be the same off of liquor. It'll make you feel good. And that's why people call it liquid courage. If you want some of that liquid courage, man, go talk to her. I don't know, I'm kind of nervous. Man, drink this. Throw that cup back. Man, go talk to her. All right. Come on, man, dance. Drink this. Go out there. it make people act a fool. Drop down to Verse 22.
Verse 22. And when they are in their cups, they forget their love both to friends and brethren, and a little after draw out swords.
He said they forget both they love to friend. He said to friends and brethren. What's going on, man? You my brother. What's going on? We've been friends for years. Boy, got too much of that in his system. Then it said they drawing out swords. They ready to kill each other because they having an argument off this liquor. They having a disagreement off this liquor, a certain sensitivity off that liquor, off that wine. And read verse 23.
Verse 23. But when they are from the wine, they remember not what they have done.
And then once they no longer drinking, they don't even remember doing that. I said, what? Oh my goodness. I think a lot of us have had these days. I did what? I jumped off the tape. Oh my goodness. I was falling off the, oh my goodness. I pulled a sword on who? But this is celebrated in the world, right? Is this a righteous holiday? Is this anything righteous or anything that our people should partake of? And that's why I said that's the part that they want you to celebrate. I don't know what happened. Wives going out and got 12 hours of unaccounted time while they left their husbands at home with the children. What? Oh, no. Oh, no. You got to go. You can't tell me where you been. You can't remember who you was with for oh, no. Oh, no. It destroys people. It destroys marriages, relationships, whatever, because it's not in moderation. Let's read Sirach 31:27. So now let me give some understanding, bring a little bit of balance to this, because this isn't the whole focus of the lesson, but it is something important, both in everyday life, but also in regards to this day, because this is a day where people drink so heavily. 31:27.
Book of Sirach, chapter 31 and verse 27. Wine is as good as life to a man, if it be drunk moderately.
He said it's as good as life. I mean, come on now. Even in the worst positions and circumstances, some people, a lot of these celebrities, they have some real horror stories of how they came up, right? They talk about being homeless. They talk about hitting the streets. They talk about used to be prostitutes and strippers and all these different things at one point in their lives. And then because they just continue to fight, now they celebrities. They're rich. They're millionaires. They're billionaires. He said, wine is as good as life. I feel like life, you always rejoice because no matter how bad it gets, you feel like, okay, as long as I keep living, there's a chance that things can change. He said, wine is as good as that life to a man, but only if you drink it moderately. Go ahead.
What life is then to a man that is without wine?
He said, what is life without wine? You're not gonna have the same amount of fun. You're not gonna have the same amount of celebration. There's a lot of times where it is useful, where it is something that makes things enjoyable. You having a bad day? That's why the Most High said we can have liquor and wine at our feast. You having a bad day? You had a rough week. You come in, you see smiling faces, get hugs. You get you a cup. By the end of your first cup, you like, man, you ain't even worried about it. Go ahead.
For it was made to make men glad.
He said that was the whole purpose. It's made to make men glad. Let's read on.
Wine measurably drunk, and in season bringeth gladness to the heart, and cheerfulness to the mind. Wine drunken with excess maketh bitterness to the mind, with brawling and quarreling.
He said if you drink, because the scriptures don't condemn drinking. Contrary to popular belief, especially I think even Catholics, they believe that that's like a total all-out sin. It's not the case. It's not what the Bible says. And it's a very simple question of when you think Christ turned water into wine, what do you think he did with it right after he made it? And stay back, it's a sin now. They drank it. He said it's good as long as you keep it in moderation. And he said don't drink it with excess. Then that's when you get violent. You start to get a reputation on the liquor. Oh, here you go. You got a whole lot of energy. Man, I'm just, because you got some of that liquor in your system. Read on.
Drunkenness increases the rage of a fool till he offend.
And then it says, if you a fool and you drinking, man, you going to mess around and offend somebody. You're going to say something that you shouldn't have said, hurt somebody you shouldn't have hurt, angered somebody you shouldn't have angered, all because you got that liquor in your system. Go ahead.
It diminishes strength and maketh wounds.
He said it could break you down and it's going to make some wounds. Somebody going to get hurt. Let's jump up to verse 25, and then we're going to get back to the PowerPoint.
Verse 25, show not thy valiantness in wine, for wine hath destroyed many.
He said, don't show your valiantness. It's okay. If you strong, you got the biggest pecs in Israel, rejoice. You got the biggest python biceps, rejoice. You can run 20 miles and you ain't, rejoice. But you don't have to be strong when it comes to drink. You the smartest, most learned, rejoice. There is an honor to that. There is an honor to all of those things, whether it be physical health, bodily excellence, physical excellence, mental excellence. There's a honor with that. But he said, look, with all these things that it's honorable to have a skill in, don't be valiant in wine. You could be a man of war, man. I could hit a penny at a quarter mile away with this rifle. Woo! That's impressive. But don't do that with liquor. Don't turn around and be like, hey, yo, watch me down this. Because then that's where you're going to offend. Look how many people, man, you could look it up, how many people make a fool out of themselves trying to prove that they can handle all that liquor. They coming out the club, one shoe, lost purse, no wallet, cracked phone. Like, man, he said, don't show your valiantness in wine. You leave that alone. Let's go back to let's take us back to the PowerPoint. We're about to wrap it up. Could we go, leprechaun. So where did this little guy come from? Where did this little man, in coming from folklore, this mischievous spirit, where does it come from?
Leprechaun. In Celtic folktales, leprechauns were cranky souls responsible for mending the shoes of the other fairies.
So they're notoriously aggressive, right? Go ahead.
The original Irish name for these figures of folklore is Labrasin, meaning small-bodied fellow. Belief in leprechauns probably stems from Celtic beliefs in fairies, tiny men and women who could use their magical powers to serve good or evil.
To serve good or evil. So the leprechauns, they're basically supposed to be of some type of fairy, right? They're supposed to be basically like in a fairy family. They're associated with fairies. So you even see things that stem off of leprechauns, like what? The tooth fairy. You be good. You lost a tooth, put it on your pillow. The tooth fairy's going to reward you. Serving a god, worshiping and giving credence, offering a sacrifice of your own flesh. That's what all of this stuff, it all ties in together. It's so common, we don't even realize how wicked it is. So they can choose that, well, they have magical powers, and they can choose to serve good or evil. Go ahead.
Leprechaun was initially red, but turned green to signify association with Ireland.
And they were originally dressed in red. And if you look up some of the original images of leprechauns, they look like little demons. Or they look like little monsters, basically. They got huge heads and tiny bodies. They got little horns and red outfits. They look like little demonic creatures. But people ain't going to accept that. You're not going to accept, well, you know what? Let me not even say that, because Halloween is a thing. But that's not why we're here right now. People will accept those things. But a leprechaun is more, it's more jolly. It's more exciting. It's easier. It's pleasing. Look at him. You feel like he would harm somebody. You see that, you be like, oh, I got wishes. It's associated with everything good. Green is good. Dress him in green. Go ahead.
Most leprechaun legends can be traced back to the 8th century tales of water spirits, which were known as lutrapan, which means small body.
So the same thing, it means a little person, small body fellow, small body, and it's to a water spirit. So it's all these different types of spirits. Some are water spirits, some are wishing spirits, but it's very clear they can choose good or evil. And notoriously, it seems like they choose evil, though they're always trying to be painted in a good light so that they're more acceptable, right? And that's supposed to say did on this last point.
Did you know that leprechauns are actually a protected species under EU law?
So keep in mind, right, that's how serious these things become. Because we get told the leprechaun at the end of the rainbow, the pot of gold, we get told about the wishes, we get told the tooth fairy. And as a child, I mean, because I didn't grow up knowing that I was an Israelite, right? It didn't happen until later in my life. I remember being like insulted, frustrated if I didn't know where my baby tooth went because I wanted some money from the tooth fairy. I wanted, they make it seem like it's desirable for children to be visited by these spirits because it comes with a reward. And it's not any reward. They're not leaving you apples. They're not leaving you slices of carrot. Like, look, the leprechaun gave you good health. Nah, they're giving you money. And then that's another thing that's constantly embedded in our minds. Blessings, good health, godliness, it's money. Look, I offered a tooth, I got money. I did a good thing, I got money. I've been a good person, I'm being rewarded with money and gifts. You do good during Christmas, you get money and gifts. You do good at this time, you get money and gifts. You celebrate St. Patrick's, you get money and gifts. Follow a rainbow, you get money and gifts. It's always being embedded, but these really have to do with spirits. So what type of spirits are you calling on to yourself? Are you calling into your house? Are you calling on to your children because you're partaking in these traditions of men? Read on.
Carlingford's Live by a Foe Loop Trail is officially protected land for the 236 leprechauns that apparently live in Ireland. A local lobbyist group, which contains Kevin Woods, a native of Carlingford, managed to convince the EU that the area should be protected, and now it is under the European Habitats Directive.
So it's not just, we regard it, because that's the thing. That's what makes something so easy to accept. And you can bring it back to us. That's what makes something so easy to accept is when you can pretty much write it off, right? If a Jake came up to you, he like, hey, man, look, I can fly. You're like, man. So you can fly. It's easy to write off. So you don't really believe it. But then some things become so easy to write off, you don't really double check them. All right, you put the tooth under the pillow, all right, get some money. All right, leprechaun, the St. Patrick, all right, cool. It's not something you're not going to take all that seriously. But sure enough, there's even laws in place with these leprechauns. So there's traditions throughout your average, if you're in the world, if you haven't come to this doctrine, come to the understanding of being an Israelite and keeping the laws, it's around you pretty consistently. These ideals, these beliefs, and you're always reinforcing them because you have a number of different times where you have to acknowledge, oh, look, that's what I've heard about. You believe it in so much that you really start to feel a connection with a people, a culture, a tradition, and gods that have nothing to do with your people. And it's always reinforced. And we get older and we give it to our kids. Then they see the rainbow. Oh, look. They see the same pattern. Oh, look. They wearing green. Now they trying to pick clovers and, I had a good day. It's because I found this clover. There goes another reinforced ideal. All the while, we're straying further and further from the Most High God, further and further from who we're actually supposed to be, the things that we're actually supposed to be doing, the presentation we're actually supposed to be giving as righteous, law-abiding Israelites. You have anything you want to add up? Con. So I hope this has been informative and edifying. I think it's pretty obvious that our people shouldn't celebrate, but if you did not know the severity of some of these origins, if it kind of was something, because that's one of the standpoints that is easy to take, that, well, this isn't pagan in origin, so it ain't the worst thing if I just so happen to celebrate it, but I'm yet to find, some of these days that are in America that have a positive origin, that are not tied to paganism, that are not tied to another God. Even the ones that they try to disguise as Christianity, as holy, as righteous, as to do with Christ, still you will find all manner of wickedness just under the surface. So we appreciate you for tuning in tonight. We hope that, again, that this has been edifying. All praise, honor, and glory to the Most High God. And with that, we're going to say Shalom.